Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean, some of you might be like,
Continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. I promised you guys a guest for this episode, and I delivered. I'm really regretting it right now, actually, because she's about to show up, and my ego is in full flight, freeze, all the things right now. My ego is super triggered right now because of the topic we were going to discuss. And I have alluded to this topic in last week's episode, but also if you follow me on social media, I talked a little bit about it in my stories as well. And when I brought up the whole crop top thing at the gym and how I felt super uncomfortable in my own body and, you know, heard all of these projections in my own head about what everyone must be thinking about me and how I didn't want to be perceived, you know, a certain way at the gym if I were wearing a crop top because I'm there to lift. And it just created all of these stories, right? And then in my actual stories that I shared on Instagram and Facebook, I had talked about a woman commented about my back when we were literally in the middle of exercising. And she was like, oh my gosh, you know, you're a beast or whatever. And immediately my ego wanted to kind of curl up in a little ball and hide because, oh, no, don't shine the light on me. No, please don't. You know, so it was really hard for me to receive that. I'm like, no, Tammy, she's giving you a compliment and that's okay for you to receive that. But that was this whole thing about my ego taking on such a different version than what most people would expect. And, you know, a lot of people would probably think that I have a big ego because I would wear a crop top or a sports bra in the gym, when really it's the opposite. Because my ego wants me to play small. My ego does not want me to be confident. My ego does not want me to shine a light. It does not want to be the hot dog that I referenced in episode 1. So for me to show up in the gym in a sports bra, in a crop top, is me basically giving my ego the middle finger and saying, no, I'm not going to play small. I get to be confident in my body. I have worked hard to get to this place. And I'm not talking about working hard in the gym. I'm talking about the healing work I have done. But that crop top story from a few years ago was really what sparked this curiosity in me. There's maybe this other part of me that I have a lot of work to do and a lot of work to heal. And so the guest that I have coming on, this is the work that she does. And yeah, but I am legit terrified about this conversation because it is so out of my comfort zone. And I'm a pretty open book. If you haven't noticed, but I know that that is part of my purpose, is to be able to shine a light on the thing that we feel shame around, and shame that may not even be yours. I learned in that crop top story that the shame that I was carrying wasn't actually mine. And so I'm really excited for you guys to hear her, but I'm also really scared. But I'm going to do it anyway. I'm doing it for you guys. Take one for the team for you. Okay. I got to go downstairs and get her, and we're going to get this show rolling. All right. See you back in a minute. All right, everyone. I am back with my guest. She made it. I warned her that I was terrified and sweating and trying not to go into a full-blown panic attack. So it's all good. Her energy is calming me right now, which is fantastic. So, but I'm going to give her the proper introduction because, like, all the things that she does is so amazing and I don't want to butcher it. Thank you. So this is my guest, Christie Bemis. And actually, before I jump into your intro, it's very interesting. I was thinking about this right before you got here, is that my intuition has been guiding me to you. because I did a program with Amber.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what program it was, but she sent this little thank you box or whatever for participating. And there was this little baggie in there and it had a business card. And I remember scanning the QR code, was like, well, this is interesting. And I don't even remember what it all was. But there was something inside of me that was saying, you need to check out this woman. And then
I think there was the wisdom cards and like
Yes.
some matches
Yes.
for like ignite your life kind of thing.
yes,
So,
that's exactly
yeah.
what it was. It's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. But I remember there was, again, like this little part of me that was like, what's this? Who was this person? And I remember doing a little research and thinking, oh boy, like I'm going to need you in my life at some point. But I wasn't ready at that point. So I don't think I ever went ahead and went beyond the search.
Yeah.
But I also know now, and I mentioned this to my friend Zoe, is I had said, once I heal my inner child,
Watch out.
I know there's this whole other part of me that needs a whole lot of healing. And that's where I was like,
Watch out. Watch out, world.
oh, then I go to this event back in April, the Unleashed event.
Yes.
And all of a sudden she was there. And I was like, well, isn't that interesting? And really, I've done so many of Amber's programs, and she always has your cards at every retreat.
Oh, that's
so you
great.
literally
Yeah.
been pinging me
Yeah.
for the last probably 2 years. I just
That's great.
keep getting these little nudges. And so when you were at this event and then we talked, we're like, all right.
Now we're friends.
Now we're friends. Yeah. Maybe we'll see after today. We might never speak again after this.
Oh, I feel your energy and I believe that we're friends.
Yeah. Oh no, you're never getting rid of me is really what it is. Peace for life.
Yeah.
But the reason I wanted to have her on, and I gave you guys a little bit of an intro about just being able to be comfortable in my body. And from episode 1, I shared how insecure I was about my body. And at one point it was so much about my weight and how I looked and all of these things. But the more that I have explored this, I realized it was so much more than that. And I feel like I just kind of keep peeling back these layers and layers to see how deep some of this goes. I had so much shame about my body, but it was almost kind of covered up with, well, because you're overweight. So I'm not overweight anymore. Why is the shame still here?
Right.
So I had to peel that layer back. Like, oh no. And you kind of want to put it back in the box, but
yeah. So it is a little, talking about sex, which is what we're talking about today.
Yeah,
and
we have
shame
and shame intro.
It is a little bit of like, feels like a Pandora's box. Like, do I want to open that?
Yeah.
And maybe it's easier to just get packaged.
Yes.
But it's not at you.
Yes. So let me get to what she actually, this is what happens when you have a script that just, but so yes, the reason that I was so drawn to her is because of her background and knowing that there was this feminine part of me that I had really denied or didn't even know existed, honestly. So Christie Bemis is a psychotherapist, a sex educator and relationship coach, an Ignite Your Life mentor and author. She co-founded and now owns and operates Hot Pink University solo. She's a sex educator, relationship coach, trained in Somatica method of relationships and intimacy building, as well as a certified level 1 John Gottman's work, if you've ever heard of him. It's pretty amazing stuff.
I love his work. Yeah.
And so basically her work ignites women's and couples to reconnect through purpose, play, all of these things. She has coaching, she has her wisdom cards, and so many things. And I'm going to have her talk a little bit more about what she does and how she helps people towards the end here and all throughout. But that's her in a nutshell. Hi. So yeah, I just thought it would be, if I'm still working through this stuff at age 41, and I worked with so many women that, again, 40s, 50s, 60s that have completely denied this feminine part of them. And it's not something that you can just, I decide I'm going to feel confident in my body today. Like, because this goes so far back,
right,
to where we were even talking about, I realized I'm walking through the locker room. I have my period. And I'm hiding my tampon in my sweatshirt. the entire locker room of women.
Yeah.
Why am I hiding my tampon? Like, why? Stuff from
Yeah.
there. Like, it goes that far back. And
Right.
so many people I talk to, they don't remember having that conversation with their moms. And we can,
Mhm.
you could easily blame your mom. Well, obviously, she didn't have the support either.
No, we all just are doing the best that we can with what we know. And when we know better, we do better, right? And so by you working on the things that you are going to work on in your life, your children, right, benefit from that. Not just your female children, but your boys too.
Yeah.
By healing some of the shame that we have around our bodies being sexual bodies, around all the things around our sexual expression of who we are. I'm 53. I'm still working on it. I think the reason that I wanted to come on your podcast too is the inner child work and sexuality are just so interlocked and go hand in hand with each other.
Totally.
And so I think it's a really important topic. And I think I know I do teach the medicine we need, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, deep diving not even that long ago, like maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, deep diving into sexuality issues has been the medicine I needed. And then wanting to like pull it forward and shine the light on it for other women too.
Right. And then, then you find people like me.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is just so much fun and super empowering.
So let's go way back to where do you see this starting to become an issue in childhood?
I think it becomes an issue in childhood. Gosh, it just feels like almost immediately if you think about your first memories as a child learning about sex or learning about touch. The most impressive memory, I think, the first earliest memory I have is my sister was caught touching herself. And she was in the bathroom and had her legs spread. And she was like, "Look, mommy, this feels so good." And my mother would like tell that story at every like gathering we went to and so the memory for me was don't touch yourself, or if you're going to, like, for sure hide it from mom. Like don't do that because she'll like shame you publicly. And I love my mom and I'm not mom bashing any moms out there. We're all just doing the best that we can. And my mother was a very open about sexuality person for her time. And it came directly from my grandmother, her mom, being so repressed and like shaming. Yeah. And so she wanted to make sure she raised girls and boys around their sex in very sex positive ways, but still had her own limitations. Yeah. By like tittering at a party about my sister touching herself.
Well, and that's interesting because when you said that, I immediately thought she was going to yell at her and say, "Stop," which would have been my assumption. And I have felt like if I've ever seen like Arlo is, if anyone can twerk, it's Arlo. You've got some dance moves, but there's things where it might look like a sexual move. And I want to immediately like jump in and be like, "Stop." Like, no, that's embarrassing. It's shameful.
No, my mom she wasn't embarrassed about it. And if anything, she was like boisterous about it and used it as, I think she was trying to use it as an example in the midst of other people at parties or gatherings of, we need to talk about her. And I told her to go in the bedroom and that it's a private touch. And, she would follow up with all those things. But I just remember it being just like embarrassment for me is a huge inner child work. Like that's the work I have in life is I don't want to feel embarrassed ever. It just is such an uncomfortable feeling for me. And so that just was really empowering for me of like a key memory of sex.
And I love that you said that because this is where, when I look at my childhood and I think like, I had a pretty good childhood. Like, where is some of this coming from? Some of it isn't always what you directly experienced. It's what you witnessed.
Yes.
And so that's such a classic example of like, that happened to your sister. Your mom was talking about your sister, but you witnessed it and it's like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not putting myself in that situation ever.
Right.
So, because people always try to like quantify how bad their experience was, like, well, it wasn't that bad, but they witnessed things and they saw things or they felt things. And so it's just that was
Yeah, and
powerful
another
example.
key sexual experience first sexual experience I often hear people talk about or women talk about is how we're taught sex education in school.
Yeah. Aria's right there. I know. I'm just like,
third or fourth
cringe.
grade, I want to say it was, at
Yeah.
least when I was in
Yep.
school, and the boys went in one room, the girls went in the other, and it was awkward. It was like hide myself
yeah.
under the covers, and it was all cautionary.
Yes.
Like there was some anatomy, basic anatomy. Definitely the clitoris was not on that anatomy
What?
lesson, right? It was all around don't get pregnant, don't get an
Yeah.
STD, don't, right?
Yes.
There was nothing around, and this is your clitoris, and this is your anatomy that gives you pleasure.
Yeah.
And make sure you understand and self-touch and know your anatomy. Like none of that is taught.
No.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a pediatrician and she was like, just don't give it nicknames. Like say what it is.
Yeah.
Like, be very direct about it. I was like, what? Oh, and so I tried. I mean, I can feel that discomfort come up for me when like kids would say something or ask, like, okay, remember this, Tammy. Like, this is a normal thing, and you need to teach that. Like, it's not a shameful thing that we have body parts. And so,
Yeah,
you're
and that they give us
absolutely right.
pleasure.
Yeah.
And that they give us pleasure sometimes with another person. You know, we're just not taught those things. So I think a lot of times when we're talking about sex and shame, it's around our bodies and proportion and weight and things like that. And like I always had like hairy arms growing up. So I was always, you know, like that just made me feel uncomfortable in my body. But it's also around what do I desire? What do I fantasize about?
Right.
What kinds of thoughts around sex do I have? What do I want to do to somebody? What do I want done to me? There's so much shame that goes beyond just our body, but also just how we fully want to sexually express ourselves.
Right.
And we're given this super narrow lane of like, this is appropriate. Everything outside of missionary style is taboo. And so yeah. So the shame is like, if you want something outside of these lanes,
Yeah.
you're slutty, you're bad, you're wrong, you're naughty, like all those words that go along with sexuality and sex and sexual expression. And all we really want to do in life is to try to fit in.
Yeah. Totally.
And to try to stay
Inner
in those
child
lanes.
101.
To try to stay in those lanes so nobody like kicks me out of the club.
Yeah.
Nobody like, you know, shames me or publicly embarrasses me, and that I stay within those parameters. And what happens then is we repress our sexuality, and yet it's still there. And so it kind of bubbles up in weird ways sometimes. Yeah.
To quote the movie Step Brothers, did we just become best friends? Like, oh, you just described me to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man.
Yeah. So think about what the shame does around sex. I think it limits our feelings of being embodied. I think it limits our aliveness. And I know when I first went on this journey around sexuality for myself, it really came out of pain.
Yeah.
It came out of denial. It came out of repression, my own like repression. And it came out of, you know, a marriage where when sex was okay and good, it was really good.
Yeah.
But then as soon as we started hitting like roadblocks with me being in menopause very early when I was 35, as soon as we started hitting roadblocks of my changing body or roadblocks around likes and desires that might not like match each other or differing libidos.
Yeah.
And like, how do we navigate that? Then it was like, whoa, this is a huge, huge problem.
Right.
So, and that's what I uncover with couples too, is it's not a problem until it's a problem. And then it's huge.
Right. Well, and I don't think people realize too, like how much we project onto others of thinking like, well, you don't ever make me feel sexy. You don't ever like, well, no. That's a you. Do you feel that way about yourself?
Right.
Do you feel confident in your body? Like if we're always looking for outside validation, and sometimes that can be a massive trigger, but really like that's where that internal, you're right. Like so much of this is intertwined with inner child stuff, because like if you don't feel that way within your own body,
yeah,
it's hard to then feel safe in a relationship being that way.
Yeah. And women more so than men. And I'm going to say women, but really estrogen oriented brains more than testosterone oriented brains need to feel safe because our amygdala, which is the fight, flight, or freeze response in our brains, that plays a huge role for estrogen oriented brains in their sexuality, different than
Wow.
testosterone does. Testosterone oriented brains, because we do need our amygdala to be quiet in order to feel the nerve endings in our clitoris and to feel pleasure. And when that amygdala is like going off,
Yeah.
like, what do I taste like? What do I smell like? What do I sound like? What do I want? You know, when that's going off, or you're with
What
a
are they thinking
partner,
about my body?
yeah, or you're with a partner who's like not feeling safe for you, we aren't going to have a really good time. We're going to tolerate or endure touch that is less than what we desire or want.
That's so it's so interesting that you say that, because I literally just watched something this morning and it was more like food related, in that when you are eating to suppress feelings and you're feeling triggered, but you're going to numb it with food, the reason we tend to get bloated and not feel good afterwards is because your system, you are in a heightened state. You weren't in rest and digest mode.
Yeah.
So your system was like, I don't have the resources to help you digest this food right now because I'm trying to run from this bear.
Right.
Same thing. Like if you're in your head, if you're not able to enjoy that, or because you're fighting a bear, you're worried about.
Yeah. And the nerve signals of pleasure can't get there, can't go where they need to go to feel the pleasure. So it's really powerful when you start learning about your anatomy, and not just your anatomy, your genitals, but the anatomy of the brain and how the brain plays into
that's
your
fascinating.
arousal and your turn on. I used to think whoever I was with, you're responsible for my turn on. Yeah. If I'm not turned on, you must be doing something really wrong. And here's like the 10 ways to put me on, right? So really what I've learned, and especially postmenopause for postmenopausal women, we are really responsible for our turn on.
Yeah.
And we're not Instant Pots, we're slow cookers, and we need to do some warm up, things beyond just the Cosmopolitan magazine's top 10 things to do to turn yourself on. Like we need to actually be thinking about what are my portals to my own turn on, and not feel ashamed about what those might be.
Yeah. And it was about a year ago where I had that moment of, oh, like this is my stuff to figure out. Like I need to take responsibility for this. And it really was kind of peeling back these layers of this onion. And when you talk about these lanes, like me having this conversation on a podcast, or just having it in general. Like I remember the first time I ever talked to another girlfriend about that. It was so uncomfortable. But then when we did, it was like, oh my gosh, me too. And da 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 da. So like little by little, you'll have these conversations like one-on-one with a friend. So again, like to be here talking about like is so far out of my lane right now, but I'm like, whatever. Here we are. But also when you talk about that shame, like that is how ego will protect us in all of these situations. And you can see again, like how that stuff could form in childhood, but now how it's impacting relationships, and not just with a partner, but with yourself. So for me, because I'll use this reference. When I was in my internship, when was this? I don't know. I was the oldest one. I think I was 25 when I was in my internship, and most of the other girls just came out of their undergrad, and I was coming out of my grad program. And I think there was 11 of us or something like that, and they wanted to have one of those passion parties.
Oh yeah,
I've been to that. That was the thing. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? They were laughing so hard at me because I was so uncomfortable. Like, again, did I grow up in a box? I don't know. Like I was so naive to any of this stuff and these things and these boundaries. What?
Yeah.
It's like, I realized like I can't start there. Like I have to go so far back to the deconditioning, because that was super triggering. I laughed it off, but I realized like how far this really goes back. So how do you work with someone who is there and like to get them started through this process?
That is so funny that you say that, because I keep like my first dildos that I ever purchased from parties like that. I keep them because they're so primitive and archaic. And it's like, that was supposed to fit inside. Like, really? That was supposed to be what was going to give me pleasure because somebody told me it was, you know? And so now I know
Your own little
better,
museum.
like how to find and purchase the correct, like, self-pleasuring toy or partner pleasure toy. Where do you start? I think part of it is learning about your anatomy, learning about your body, and that's going to be self-touch too. You know, I always encouraged my kids growing up, like, touch yourself. When they turned 12, I had them go and get their first massage so that they were touched by another body in a safe place, to teach them about how that feels to be touched in a safe way by another person.
Wow.
And to be able to tell the massage therapist, like, harder, softer, lighter, whatever, so that you start finding your voice. So I think it can start there, even for adult grown women. You get a massage and, like, use your voice. Don't sit and endure touch, right? That doesn't feel good. Like, that's, if it hurts, let that person know. Softer. Like, it just can start conditioning that amygdala that's trying to, like, people please and, like, oh, I don't want to, like, offend the massage therapist because they're an expert.
You literally just saw right through me, because that was exactly what I was thinking. Like, tell you how many times I have felt uncomfortable and didn't say something.
Yeah.
Or again, maybe it, like, was not an enjoyable experience. Like, I didn't think there was ever such thing as a bad massage, but there was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Well, like, oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't stay there in an uncomfortable situation or in pain and not say anything. So it's like, I know this is a bigger thing. And this actually happened not that long ago. Some dude just being like, disgusting. And I shouldn't say that. It was just an aggressive, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And everything in me knew exactly what to say. But my people pleaser, like, literally, it almost felt like put this, like, cover over me. It's like, no. This is what we're going to say. And I was just, like, trying to joke it off and laugh about it. And I was screaming inside, like, no, like, you are not interested. This is not appropriate. But I was like, well, yeah, I'm not. Oh my God. I was so mad at myself after that. And then I got home and I'm thinking, what would you have said to your daughter if she was in that situation? I was disappointed in my ego. I wasn't disappointed in myself, because myself knew she was screaming. I was like, ego, why would you do that? Why would you say, like, this is why girls get in trouble and get in situations, because they can't, like, find their voice and speak their truth. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's so empowering, because when you're actually on the massage table getting the massage, getting triggered, you can kind of find that voice of, like, no, I don't.
That's like, wow.
I can say a boundary nice. I can say, hey, I'm wondering if you could stop, if you could go softer. And so it's practice. The more, and that's really how the amygdala learns too. It doesn't learn by talk therapy. It learns by experiencing. So you have to experience it. But think about how many times you maybe were, like, making out with somebody, or even having sex with your perfectly loving, wonderful partner, and you endured a touch that was less than what you wanted or too fast. Like, wow, slow the roll. I don't want my breast touch right now, right? But we don't say something, or we say something in maybe a shaming way. And so then, it gets our partner all in a fluster because I don't know how to please you,
Right.
And so I think just learning ways that we can find our voice around, yes, what I want, or I'm a maybe here. Let's slow down and, like, feel into
This
this.
is, like, mind blowing.
Yeah. Good.
What?
Yeah. Like, you can have a conversation
Right. What?
around what you want.
If you can, like, feel my throat chakra.
Yeah. Can do it.
Oh my God. But I love that. And I was telling them on last week's episode about my daughter wants a massage every night before bed. I'm like, absolutely. And I love, like, I never even thought of that this is a safe way.
Yeah,
you're
training her to get checked. You are.
I mean, with her, not with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think the other thing you already mentioned it, which is putting yourself in community and circles of women who want to talk about sex. Because women who talk about sex, research shows women who talk about sex and learn from each other in open, curious ways actually are having more sex and better sex. It just goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so I run a woman's talking circle once a month.
Oh,
And we get on and I teach something for maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. And then you go in breakout rooms with women from all over the world. And you go in breakout rooms. And
cool.
for, 15 minutes or so, you each take turns kind of sharing something about the topic, whether that's embodiment practices, portals to turn on, anatomy and arousal, or kinks.
Yeah.
We talk about all kinds of things in these circles. And I think that putting yourself in with your girlfriends and saying, your community you already have, and saying, I want to talk about this more, and not in degrading, derogatory ways that we're taught are like okay, but in ways of, do you have information, resources, or advice that I could use, right?
Yeah. That is huge. And I think that was like the first time I started kind of opening myself to friends, because again, there's so much shame about it. You didn't talk about that stuff. And there is something so liberating about that. And like, regardless of where people are at, but I feel like there are so many women out. Nope, because we don't want anyone to know that that's something that we struggle with. But again, I think it's, I mean, I don't want to think there's something wrong with my relationship or whatever. And so we don't give ourselves the resources because we don't want that shame of being judged or whatever. But like, why can't we use that to empower ourselves?
Right. And Brene Brown talks about shame a lot, right? And women's relationships with other women. You're not going to share your stuff with every single woman in your life.
Right.
You're going to pick and choose which woman has really had your back and deserves to hear some of your shame around sex or some of your questions that you might have. So I think discernment of like, where is it safe to do that? I think the first step too is prioritizing sexual wellness. I know for me as a mom, I put it on the back burner. It was like, where am I going to have the time or the energy to do that? And I also had a very narrow preconceived notion of what it meant to be a woman as a mom and sexual versus a woman pre-mom and sexual. It was much quieter. Like, I don't make noises. Like, oh wait, kids are here. It was very, having children was very, for me personally, it was just really repressing around my sexual expression because I just had that notion of what does a good mom sexually look like. And so I really had to work on my beliefs around that of like, yeah, I'm a mom, but I'm still like a woman with desires and wants. And if we don't prioritize this in our marriage or our relationship, we become just roommates, sexless roommates.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece of it. And if you reach a breaking point or like a huge barrier of like, we just can't get through it, go get professional help. Like go find somebody like me, either a sex therapist or somatic sex educator or somebody that's working in this field, and go get the expert help that you need.
Well, and I think that is hopefully a shift that we're starting to see more and more of. So like, if you break your leg, you go to the doctor to get help.
Yes.
But if there's something that's like not working in your relationship or not working with yourself, like that's where like you bring in help like us, and just I always say to people, like, I think of myself as like maybe like an energy doctor in a sense. Like I help clear your energy just through conversations or through energy work or whatever. But like we have to take care of ourselves. Like there's energetic hygiene, like me being intentional about going outside, clearing my energy. Just like you said, like your sexual hygiene. Like how do you take care of yourself in those ways? Just like brushing your teeth.
Yeah. And I know for me, the difference that it made is when I started my own journey around healing sexual shame, my relationships, all of them, not just my sexual relationships, but my relationships with everybody was more alive, more connected, more intimate, it deepened things. It also helped me gain confidence, I think, as a woman in other ways.
Yeah.
And I still get shame like around the work that I do. People don't quite understand it. I just had an experience a couple months ago that was super shaming around a notion of like what I do, because I talk with people about sex and like who I am. And it was shamed by a family member even. And I was like, wow, you just don't get it. Like I don't have to pull that into me.
No, that's a
That
projection.
can be your
That's
story and
your
I can leave
story.
it with you.
Yeah.
And I know who I am and I know why I'm on this path.
Yeah.
And so when things like that happen for me, I just think that gives me even more conviction and
Yes.
persistence of like, yeah, I'm not going to be silent. I'm coming on a podcast. I'm
Yeah.
gonna talk about it again and again and again because it has made a huge difference in my life and my
Absolutely.
relationship.
Yeah. I love that. Well, so when you talked about like motherhood and you kind of forget that you're a woman, and I was thinking like, I think I was suppressed even going into motherhood. And so then motherhood almost gave me an excuse.
I even dressed different. Like
Oh,
I have
yeah.
pictures of me holding my baby. And I'm like, what is that?
Is that
Mom shorts and a mom top for sure,
Oh.
and a mom haircut.
What is that kind of where we try like, we use our outer body to deflect because we're just not in that space energetically. Like it's kind of where sometimes weight can be protection for people,
Yeah.
and so in that case, like I'm not there like mentally or physically, so I'll do everything to just shut down those desires by dressing this way or and again that takes me back to that crop top.
Fit in.
Yeah,
Fit
absolutely.
in with other
Yeah.
moms that are showing up doing other mom things.
Yeah.
I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be ostracized. I don't want to be talked about behind my back as I walk out because I wore too low cut of a whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and that was me at the gym. But that was the thing was I saw all these other women wearing sports bras and crop tops and like, how are they doing that? I literally was thinking like, how is she doing that? And women that were different sizes and shapes than me, I was like, how can she walk around confident like that? And granted, I didn't know what was going through her head, but it was like starting to like piece this back. And you're right of it. It's that fear of judgment. And but that's where I had to realize like these are your own projections, Tammy. And that's where I had to like deal with my own stuff.
And honestly, if somebody is going to judge you for wearing a crop top, that says way more about who they are as a person.
I didn't know that then. So I took like all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, like, ego will take that story a million different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it kind of makes me think too about, some of this like feminine energy and masculine. And I talked a little bit about that last week of how in that gym environment, which can be very masculine because I'm like lifting weights and I wanted to be strong. Part of the other thing about not wearing a crop top or a sports bra for so long was because I didn't want to be perceived as slutty or trying to get attention. I wanted to be taken seriously because I'm here to lift. But if I dress like that, then people won't think that. And it was this whole thing. So how do you think on that regard?
Before we got on, I was sharing with you about around my thoughts around flirting. Like when I was newly divorced in my 50s again and needing to date, I was like, I don't even know how to do this because flirting to me, I always associated with you don't have much going on up here.
Yeah.
And really, when I was taking like somatic training, I had to, in the somatic training, flirt with a man who was also taking a somatic training in the role play. And I told him all the things I'm like that are coming up for me. Like, I feel stupid if I say like something silly and stupid and girly, and none of that feels good on me. And he's like, well, what if you flirted smartly? Oof. And I was like, what does that look like? And he's like, well, what's a movie that you watched lately? Or what's like a book that you read lately? And how can you talk to me about it in like a flirty, connected way? And I was like, I can do that. Like I could do that. And so it just really released a lot. Like I can flirt the way that it feels authentic and correct to me and right for me. And also I can flirt and still be smart. But we're taught all these things. I think that we're really taught them as women to keep us safe. Yeah. Because we're in so much danger in the world. But it does a number on us.
It makes me think back when you were, talking about the classes that, third and fourth graders have to take too. It reminded me of Degrassi High. Was that those are the videos that we had to watch about all that stuff. But I think back to like how those girls were perceived, and it was kind of that energy of like,
Yes. Yeah. Like they're
Oh,
just asking for it in some way of some kind of like victimization, right?
yeah. Well, that's kind of going
Yeah.
back to that story I said where I got really uncomfortable, a month or so ago. Was like, no, just because I'm wearing this does not give you permission to speak to me that way.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I wanted to say that, but it couldn't come out. Instead, I
But
like,
it will next time.
oh hell yeah, I've been practicing. I have literally been practicing.
It
Like
will next.
I'm rehearsing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that was the craziest experience because I was literally like watching this happen and looking at my ego, like what? But man, so it's like even in those situations, like advocating for ourselves, like you said, like getting help or how do I start to learn this? And even if you're in a relationship or not, like just as a woman who maybe has gone through motherhood and forgot about this part of her. And honestly, the same thing to me. Like I told myself it didn't matter anymore.
That's what I told myself. Like that was for my youth. That was when I was younger. That was when, I was more fit, whatever. Like I told myself that sex didn't matter anymore to me. And really it was watching a friend of mine go through her own sexual journey and feeling the envy around it or even jealousy around it. And for me, envy and jealousy is always a compass for there's something about what she's doing that I want and desire. So it's not envy or jealousy, like I want to knock her down because she's feeling too full of herself. It was more of watching her. I was like, I want exactly what she's having or something close to it. What is she having? And so it was really that like pain pushes until vision pulls kind of feeling of like,
oh, say that again.
What pain pushes. So the pain of living in a very sexless marriage and relationship where we couldn't talk about anything. And then all of a sudden this vision of like this other woman that was doing some really amazing work and watching how it lit her up, watching how she moved through life differently. It was like this vision of I want that. And I miss that. I'm lonely for that. And so it was really that kind of put me on this journey of I started going on retreats that had priority around sexual wellness. I started reading books, watching specials. There's some great ones out there right now on Netflix. Sex, Love, and Goop. How to Build a Sex Room is another really great one on Netflix. It's so good. It's so good from a psychological perspective. I'm like, this is so good.
Oh wow.
In what was the other one? Principles of Pleasure, which is also out there right now, which is based off of Emily Nagoski's work around Come As You Are, which is a great book to start with. But starting to just kind of consume and explore why am I shutting this fountain of youth off for me?
Right.
And I deserve to be a sexual being and sexually express myself too.
Well, and again, I think that absolutely goes back to inner child work on worthiness because I'm not worthy of feeling good. I'm not worthy of experiencing pleasure. I'm not worthy. And it all stems back to those things because doing anything for myself feels selfish and not realizing. And when I started getting into energy work and learning about the different energy centers and my sacral chakra, which is, power, like your body, your emotions, that femininity and creativity. And I was like, oh no, like I'm an entrepreneur. I have to create programs and things. And if I can't tap into my creativity because I completely block off this part of me, like, uh-oh.
And your spirituality too. However you express that, it's tapped in through sexuality, creativity, spirituality are like this with each other. And when one's not in balance, the others are not in balance.
Yeah.
And so that's where the impact of like going on a sexual prioritizing wellness journey, that's where the impact will be significant. It's allowed me to even make more money.
Well, that was part of it. It's all locked into that sacral chakra. And I was like, wait a second, you're an entrepreneur. Like, and so you can't have that block because you're on your own. But it was literally blocking everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no. And that's where I said I had to take responsibility for this. And I actually enrolled in, I don't know, it was like a 6-week course. And I had shame around that, like even just spending money on that. But same thing, I need help to do this and figure this out. But to even get to that place was huge for me. But it was learning more about like, these different archetypes and parts of us, and like when we operate in our shadow and all of these things. And
Yeah.
it was fascinating to me because I posted this last night on my stories, and it says, you are not chasing your light, it is chasing you. It shows up through envy. It shows up through people you admire or put on pedestals. It shows up through compliments you often disregard. It shows up through gifts that you think the world isn't ready for. It shows up through ideas that won't leave you alone. You're not chasing your light, it's chasing you. So like when you said that of just, right? About, I start like, think about that. And I think if people are watching me and my journey as well, like there might be certain aspects where it's like, why does she get to go out on her paddleboard and, on a Thursday afternoon? It's like, well, there's something inside of you that is obviously craving freedom.
And we're meant to inspire each other and empower each other. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of those things like, well, why me? Like, why not you? Like all of these things.
Go for it.
Yeah.
What's stopping you?
Right.
Yourself, usually.
100%. Yeah. Or your ego is just like, yeah, that's not safe. And really, that is so much of this journey is like inner child work 101 is you are safe. You are safe. But you have to feel safe within your body first. And so even today, I was not. It was like
safe enough.
Right. Safe enough to,
if you had to feel completely safe today to sit down and talk to me about sex, we would not be here.
No, we would not.
But you felt safe enough
yes,
to explore it. And I think that we have to feel a little uncomfortable.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah. Absolutely. Is you have to kind of sit in the discomfort to work through it. Because I could have easily been like, oh, can't make it today. I was like, no, I'm going to sit in this discomfort and we're going to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And again, if I'm having this conversation, how many other women out there are not having the conversation that might be listening? That like, oh my gosh, yeah, maybe I do deserve to get help. Or maybe this part of me isn't dead inside. Or maybe I have never explored this side of me. And that was kind of where I was like, well, that's not true because I love to dance. And I think that was the only time I would never dance in front of other people. But like, I love to dance. And so it's like, that was maybe the hint that like, I knew I could move in sexy ways.
Yeah. Why not dance in front of other people?
Oh, no.
Like enjoy you enjoying.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would immediately shut that down. But that was maybe what made me think, oh, maybe she was always there.
Yeah.
But this was the only way I ever allowed her to express herself by myself.
Our sexual essence is always there. Like we're born with it. It's our birthright to have pleasure. It's what society does as a number and what we do to ourselves that represses it and dims it. And so, shine the light on it. It was funny because Amber and when we were talking about Amber, it's Amber Swanner, and she does a lot of work with entrepreneurial women here. When I sat down for that dinner, I went to like the VIP dinner before the Unleash event. She introduced me to everybody. Oh, here's Christie, and she works with people around sex. She works with women around sex. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, do I want to be known for that? But then there was this like deep welling of like, I stand for that. Like I stand that. Yes. And that's really important.
I just caught it out of the corner of my eye when you said that. We both went like this. Like just instinctually, and that is also what I was talking about with this whole, I don't mean to keep coming back to this stupid crop top thing, but it's so much of that and where, just lost it. All right. And we're back. I had a total, like my thought left my brain and I had to find it. And so she let me find it. Luckily we have editing, so you didn't have to experience where did it go? But it's back. But I was referring back to this crop top thing in my stories, and I was talking about how ego shows up differently around sexuality and around women, because some people, their ego might go to the other extreme. Again, there's this whole pendulum swing of, maybe going to dangerous extremes and ways to use our body versus completely denying and suppressing it. Whereas my ego would always tell me to hide, don't be confident, don't shine your light, don't, wear anything that's remotely considered sexual or sexy or whatever versus, so how do you work with ego in that regard and just maybe kind of helping that pendulum like swing back to where people can feel safe enough to explore that? Because ego will block it and get us into situations again that we don't want to be in.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I don't know, I admire big, bold women. And so when I see women out there doing like really big work, I think around sex and bodies. I think sometimes right now our society needs to be shaken up by these women that are out there doing big, bold things that sometimes they say something and we're like, whoa, I can't even believe she just said that. I can't even believe she just went there. I think that the pendulum will shift back again, because it always does in extremes, like conservative, freedom, blah, blah, blah. But I do think right now we do need a little shakeup in society of like, no, pleasure is for women too.
Right.
And we are finding our voice and finding our choice in that. So the women that are out there doing bold, pioneering work, I think about like Pamela Madsen with Back to the Body. Mama Gina's been out there in New York for a very long time and doing some really big, bold work. You have the erotic blueprints, which Jaya has created, which is like blueprints that kind of give you like, you know how you have love languages, verbal, physical affection, quality time, acts of service, and gifts. We have erotic blueprints too. That we have a certain language that our lovers need to learn how to speak to us around sensual, sexual, kinky, energetic, and shapeshifter are the 5 erotic blueprints. And so when you start diving into those a little bit, it just kind of blows your mind of like, oh, maybe the problem has been I've been bored or I haven't been getting my erotic love language met. And so I think we need big, bold. And I don't
Agreed.
think those big, bold voices are getting us in trouble. I think they're shaking a societal cage right now, saying this is not tolerable.
You don't need to hide your tampon in your sleeve anymore.
Yeah. We have periods.
Right. Well, the reason I kind of came around back to that was because of how my ego was showing up because of the way you talked about, do I want to be known for that? Like you ego question, like, do I want to be known as this woman who talks about sex? And you're like, no, yes, I do. And that was like, same thing for me of wearing that. Like, yeah, I get to be, I want to be that confident woman. I want to be an example of those things. And so, yeah, like doing this work, but I think 100%, and me talking about inner child wounds also feels like shaking up, like, whoa, Tammy, like we've had these things buried for years. Like, why are you trying to dig this stuff up? And then it leads to stuff like this.
Necessary. I think now more than ever, we are being called to show up in relationship with one another differently, better, bigger, more emotionally mature, and more connected. And without doing the inner child work, you're just going to keep showing up, triggered, divisive, problematic, projecting, putting it,
gaslighting, sabotaging,
blaming it on somebody else, why I'm in this place in our relationship, versus if we can have these really deep conversations around, this is why this is a trigger, whether it's around sexuality or it's around like conversations or things. I think it's just really important, powerful work. So I hope you keep showing up with crop tops. I hope you keep showing up with guests on your podcast that are like in your face a little bit around like norms. Absolutely. Because I think now more than ever, we really do.
We do. And it really, it all comes down to the same thing of just suppressing our emotions as kids, which then leads to suppressing desires and all of these. It's just this lifelong, and of course that is going to impact your physical body. Things are going to start showing up. And it's interesting when you start to look at the different energy centers, like if that's blocked, maybe people have like reproductive issues or things, or bladder stuff, like just things in that area, but it blocks everything.
Well, and we get this one life, right? Just this one life. Like I'm gonna do it big. I'm gonna be authentic and like be doing what I want to do and how I want to do it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Living without, regrets, and I'm not going to do it boastfully or like purposefully hurting other people, but I am doing it authentically. And sometimes when we do ourselves authentically, it does have ramifications or repercussions on people we love and care for, but not living authentically, you're really not taking advantage of the one life that you're given here.
And that is me in a nutshell of where that was, of just like living for other people or their expectations, or really what the expectations I put on myself, right? It was
also where they are.
All the projections of like, who do I think this person needs me to be? And again, you start to forget who you actually are. I mean, that starts
Yeah.
again in childhood stuff. So being able to start to feel comfortable or even getting curious about who am I if I'm not the mom always doing all the things around the house? Who am I if I'm not this overachiever at work? Like, who am I when I'm just alone with myself? Like, do I actually know myself?
Mm-hmm.
How I feel emotionally, how I feel physically? Like, it's all intertwined. And that's why I just,
Yeah.
again, I know the universe has been like nudging you my way because it's
Good.
like, it's time, Tammy. You've done enough inner child healing. Like, you're ready for this next step. Like,
Yeah.
as you all witnessed.
Little Marvin Gaye sexual. You're ready.
Oh yeah, but it's good work that you're doing. And I just one thing that I talk about so much with the women I work with, because so many of them are operating in their masculine energy. They're very successful.
I totally have
Yeah,
throughout my life.
like,
Yeah.
very career oriented.
It's
They get
safer
stuff
for
done.
me.
Yes, very much
Feels
so.
safer.
And I think that's why women, we have such a hard time receiving. We have such a hard time receiving to like be in that feminine energy. And because in their career or at home, it's like, I always got to be doing, I always got to be getting stuff done. So it's constantly in that energy that so many women don't even know what it's like to be in the feminine energy. And it's really hard, again, to receive a
Doesn't
compliment.
feel safe to
Right.
be in our feminine energy, or we're told not to be in it, because if you're going to achieve or fit in or excel, I mean, I remember being a social worker and being in a very female oriented profession. All the administrators were men.
Interesting.
Yeah, from the director to the deputy director to my own personal like boss, yet everybody that they were, working with were women. And it just was really a message filled kind of place of like, if you want to move up,
Yeah.
like masculine up. And I know I even showed up in my marriage in ways that was very masculine because I had to take care of things. Because if I took care of everything, from like cleaning the house to budgeting and bills to putting in the boat every year and learning how to do that, then we'd all be safe. Everybody would line up perfectly and we'd all be like perfectly safe in life. And then it wasn't. And so that was very, it was maybe my desperate attempt to kind of hold everything together, but
100%,
maybe
yeah.
everything needed to fall apart
Oh,
to be in my feminine. That's okay.
wow. Really, everything needed to fall apart to be in your
Yeah.
feminine. And that is, again, you just described basically the last few years of my life where I was just like, everything needed to come out so I could find her.
Yeah.
Just find her. Because I barely knew that she existed. And here I realized like how much potential and how much power she has, but we're so used to thinking feminine or the masculine is powerful. Masculine gets things done. It's like, there's a whole untapped source of energy over here in our feminine. So like trying to help these women like understand that, like use that, ebb and flow with it. But I was working with a woman last week, and you were just trying to explore like, how do you do that? Just like like, how do you start? Like, so for me, like putting on these little, I don't know, are they cheetah? Are they?
Yeah, I love it.
I was like, cool, this is me trying to be feminine today.
And how we adorn ourselves and how we dress every day. Like that's a great starting place. We start with how authentic our environments feel for us. Like I remember one of the first things I did after my divorce was I put up Frida Kahlo painting in my living room with one of her breasts exposed and the other has like a teacup over it. And I was like, yes, like that. I'm going to put artwork up that like feels
just brings that energy in. Yeah. Because that's just it, is like, how do we even start? And again, allowing yourself to receive a compliment can be practicing being in your feminine energy. And I'm to the place where I think I actually wore this to church once, and the girl commented on my back after I wore it. And I wanted to dismiss it. And I was like, no, I will receive that. Thank you.
I work really hard.
Yes. My ego leader wanted to be like, like make some joke or brush it off. I was like, well, thank you. I will receive that. Like, so just by saying that, I'll receive that. Because I think of it as, it's like a kid at Christmas. You're handed a gift, but you're like, nope, can't. Nope, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough to receive that. Like, no kid is doing that. But that's what we do. When someone is giving you a compliment, they're giving you a gift.
For sure.
We are straight up denying ourselves of that. And I feel like that's like one simple place like women can start is allow yourself to receive a compliment. Give a compliment. Notice how good it feels, what it's like to give that gift, and notice how that person felt when they received it.
Yeah.
Why don't you deserve that same feeling when someone lit up because you commented on their earrings? Why don't you deserve that same thing?
Yeah. I remember traveling early in my 40s with a woman, Jana Stanfield. She's a singer-songwriter, and she said that when somebody gives you a compliment, you say yes, and not only that, and then you even like add another one onto it of like, and not only that, but
oh my God, I love that.
Great too, you know. And so it was a way to like soak in the compliment, but also recognize, and there's more. And it was just a really powerful activity to do for yourself. Yeah.
This is why I love this whole healing journey, because it's in stages, it's in layers. You know, you have to like go through the depths of your childhood wounds, right? Like I thought it was about my weight. Well, really, it was so much deeper than that. Well, even this, like I can learn to receive a compliment. And the next level of that is now I'm going to say, oh, and there's more.
More. Yeah. And I hope I never become competent at everything.
Right.
Or anything.
Yeah.
Because competency, then it's like, well, it feels like a dead end. Like, oh, now I'm totally competent at my sexuality.
Yeah.
I want to always remain learning, growing, curious. And so allowing ourselves to be less than competent at something is really staying on our journey, I think.
Absolutely. Well, that's such a good like take home message too, is allowing yourself to say like, I do need help in this area. I want to be more competent in my sexuality. I want to be more competent in learning about my body. Okay, universe, how do I do that? Oh, why don't you listen to the Tammy Talks podcast, and here you go.
There you go.
So tell everybody again a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah.
Things that you offer, how you help, because obviously there are women like me and so many more out there that need you shaking things up.
Yeah. So I do have a private practice in the Madison, Wisconsin area, but I also do Hot Pink University, like you mentioned. And through Hot Pink University, I do work all over the world with people. And so I work with couples, I work with women, I work with men, and it can be done virtually. Sometimes people travel here and you know, dive in deeper. In day-long kind of intensives and things. And I have a podcast too, and I'm having you come on my podcast where it's Ignite Your Life. They're just like classrooms, like 30 minutes in length, and just little little snippets of like what you can take away.
I'm gonna have to go to school first on how to keep your podcast to 30 minutes. The last 2 weeks, I'm sorry guys, I have like blown right past that.
And that's all good. But yeah, so you can find me at www.hotpinkyou.com is the easiest way to find.
Cool. And I will make sure to put all of her links in the show notes and stuff too, so you guys can find her. And again, I listened to the little signs and nudges, and I knew that I needed to have you on there. 100% we have to. And so if any of this like sparked something within you, just that curiosity or that envy or whatever it is, follow that. Like those are all little clues, all little breadcrumbs that there's maybe this feminine in you that is just screaming and wants to come out because she knows how much that she can offer.
It's fun. Sex is playful and fun, and doesn't have to be something we live in shame around.
Right. Well, and again, it's just even going back to the inner child stuff is you're basically, if we deny certain feelings, I talked about that last week, like, nope, I don't want to acknowledge your sadness. Like I'm going to abandon you because you feel sad. But then we're also abandoning our feminine. We're abandoning these other parts of us. And that is a form of abandonment. And that's why this stuff is so intertwined. Like, full circle moment. So yeah, that's why I think for both of us to be doing the work that we're doing. And I love that there is this beautiful progression. And then I have always known that this was part of it. And then there you were. Like that's just fully trusting the journey and that the people that you need are going to show up when you need them. So thank you for finding your way into my life and for being on the podcast and letting everyone else know that it is safe to explore this. It is safe to talk about it.
Yeah.
There is help out there for those of you that are like me, where like, oh, I'm just a lot of my lane, but I did it. I didn't have a panic attack. I didn't pass out.
You did it.
Yeah. I actually mentioned to her before we even started, that it feels like this is such an ongoing conversation, and there's so much more we
There's
could
so much
dive
more.
into, even
Yeah.
in terms of, again, like couples and those kinds of things. And so I'm hoping that she'll come back, because
Yeah.
I feel like we have so much more to talk about. But thank you so much for this gift today, for inspiring me and anyone else out here is watching. So I hope some
Yeah.
people hit you up and get the help they need. So
Cool. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me. Yeah. High five.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. And again, I will link all of her information in the show notes below. And I hope you enjoyed this one. I told you I had some guests coming, and I was like, go big or go home with my first one, and make me feel
There you
super
go.
uncomfortable. But we did it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Let us know if anything resonated, or like, comment, to do all of that jazz. But we would really just love to hear if there was something that sparked a thought or a feeling within you, or if you started to have conversations,
Mhm.
you know, with friends or your spouse or whatever. Like, let us know that kind of stuff, because that does help kind of like fuel that fire of like, yeah, we are doing
Brings
what we're
it
supposed to
into
be
the
doing.
light.
It's like,
Yeah.
bring it into the light. Yes, that's a great way to say that, because that's like when we don't talk about this stuff, we just add fuel to the shame fire. So I love that,
Yeah.
of just bringing this all into the light. And the more that everyone is talking about it, the more shame doesn't control us anymore. So we will end on that note. Thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll see you back next week.